Okay, welcome to part seven. Part seven is going to be where we start to, if you remember, there were those five major activities that I suggested you're going to be able to take. One was figuring out the five influential people in your life. Another one was learning to be assertive. Another one was learning to write your feelings out. But the number one thing on the list was to do learn to distorted thought patterns so you can become aware of what your brain does. Now, um, what the book that I read told me to do was to journal. And what I did is I actually went and created a sheet that I think makes it easier to know what to journal about or how to journal effectively or how to write about this stuff effectively. So what I'm going to do is, again, if anyone emails me, mattfaxx@yahoo.com, I will happily send this form along. This form helps you to start to become aware of your distorted thought patterns and then how to fix them. So here's how it works. In theory, you would print out a few of these sheets. And basically, you would keep track of times in your life where you feel extremely something, extremely angry, extremely frustrated, extremely stupid, extremely stressed out. And you would learn that the only way that you feel such an extreme way is that your brain had to go down a whole specific path of thoughts. So I'm going to do an example that will hopefully make this come to life. So let's say that somebody had a job where they worked in some kind of business and their job was to put together a PowerPoint presentation. So, they're going to get up in front of a group of 10 of their peers and go through some information, and they're supposed to make a PowerPoint. Now, let's say that they actually do a pretty decent job. They get it together, they go over it, but, they're busy. They got a lot of pressure at home, they got a lot of things going on, so they do the best they can and they put something together and it appears to be fine. So then they go to do it. Well, they go to do it and it's a disaster, and that happens to everybody in their life. You make a mistake, the file doesn't work properly, and there you are in front of a meeting full of people, and you just feel like the biggest idiot who ever walked on the earth. Now, um, that is going to happen. You're going to make mistakes. The thing is, some people, put it this way, if that happened to your best friend who you work with, there's a way that you would react to them. You'd ask them you'd be logical. What happened? Did you go over it? And then you try to help them to fix the damage that happened and try to make sure it never happened again. Of course, when it's ourselves, we're not that logical. So let's do one. This sheet, if I were to write it out right now, I'd fill it out. So I just had this awful meeting and I feel like a complete loser. Ready? I am feeling, and then I would write, like the biggest idiot who've ever lived on the earth. I am thinking, oh my, ready? And here's what I would write. I'm thinking that everyone in that meeting thinks I'm a complete moron. I had time to prepare this PowerPoint. I should have gone over it again this morning to make sure it was fine. It seemed fine last night when I did it, but I should have gone over it. I always do things like this. I spread myself too thin, and then I'm not able to come through when it really matters. And I'm never going to get promoted. You make a mistake like this, my boss is never going to forgive me, and he's always going to think that I'm an idiot. So then what you do is you write out exactly what you're thinking, because if you're feeling really bad, then it means you're thinking really bad. And what you would do is now take out your sheet of your distorted thought patterns and start to realize, am I being completely rational or am I using distorted thought patterns? Well, in that one, the ones that I can very clearly see is you're using should thinking. So if you're saying the word should, yes, that's why you're able to guilt yourself. Now, you might have to look at it and say, sometimes you look back and you think, man, if I wasn't doing this last minute, maybe I could have gotten a little more time to prepare. Maybe what it is the night before you didn't get to do it because you had an argument with somebody about something else, and you say, oh, well, see, if that didn't happen, maybe I would have been okay. So use should thinking that gets you in trouble. Another one is use words like always. I always make mistakes like this. Now, put it this way, if you always make mistakes like this, don't worry, you won't have the job long anyway. But that's not usually the way it is. It's Usually we do a good job. You make a mistake and then you overgeneralize, and then you think, that you make it that you always do that. Always is, like I said, is a terrible word. And then the last part that I tried to throw in there was like, never, I'm never going to get a promotion because my boss will never forgive me. And guess what? Bosses learn that people make mistakes, but it's kind of like what we do from it that really matters. Now, if you wrote how you were feeling, what you're thinking, and then you identify, well, I'm using should thinking, I'm overgeneralizing, blah, blah, blah. And then the idea is it's next time I can or next time I will, and then you write out, next time maybe I will budget my time better in the week to come so that I have at least 2 days to go over it and make sure that it's working okay. Maybe I could get someone else to help me and let somebody else run it. Maybe I could go to the office earlier that day and run through the PowerPoint to make sure it's fine. There's lots of things that you can do. It gives you a sense of power. It's like, hey, this time didn't work so great, but next time I'm going to have a better plan. And really, that's like the best thing you can do to reduce your stress is just say, in life, when I make mistakes, I will, as long as I was trying my best, I'm going to forgive myself, but I'm going to learn from it and try to do better next time. That's pretty much the advice that you would probably give to any 5-year-old that you know that made a mistake. But when we're adults, we tend to not be as thoughtful and understanding and forgiving as we are to other people. We're pretty harsh on ourselves. So these sheets are created. Now, the thing that's kind of cool is that if you start to fill these sheets out and you say, well, how many sheets do I do? Well, you do them until you start to see real patterns. And what I found is I filled out my first couple of sheets, and like within 2 or 3 days, it became very clear to me that like I needed to learn to be careful with the word should, because I lived a life of major guilt. Another one, and man, I don't remember this on the list. Another thing was I pretty much had this feeling, I guess it was black and white. I had this feeling of perfectionism that I had to do everything perfectly or it wasn't good enough. And that came out on my sheets too. It was that I put so much pressure on myself all the time because it's almost like if I got a 99 on a test, it was like, what, man, what do I got to do to get that other 1%, instead of realizing, man, 99% is pretty good. You should just be happy there. And maybe try to figure out what to do with the 1%, but don't pressure yourself. And those were my biggies. I did way too much should thinking and definitely way too much of perfectionism, like, everything could be perfect. And once I realized that nothing can be perfect, it's a lot easier to accept, well, I'm doing the best I can. Let me judge myself against how my peers are doing. If everybody else was failing the test and I got a 92, maybe 92 wasn't so bad. So it's learning to basically, these sheets are designed to take those evil, nasty thoughts that are going on in your head unchecked and get them out. And since if you start talking out loud to yourself a lot, people are going to think you lost your lid. Rather than say them out loud, what I do is get you to write them down. And when you write them down, you start to realize, oh my goodness, no wonder I'm always so stressed out, because I am thinking so illogically. I'm not being fair. I'm not being rational with myself. I'm overgeneralizing. I'm using words like always and never when they're not really accurate, making situations feel very extreme, and that causes a great deal of panic and stress. And really, the more panicked and stressed you are, the more likely you are to not make a mistake again. And the idea here is you help yourself formulate a plan, and you say to yourself, as long as in a situation, if I make a mistake, I'm going to formulate a new plan and I'm going to try to do better next time. That's all you would ask a little kid to do, and that's all you should ask yourself to do. And really, people have often joked to me that they'll say things like, man, you seem a little different than other people. And what I try to describe to them is I try very hard to be as understanding with myself as I would be towards you. Whatever kind of advice I would have for you, I try to give myself. And it's hard because it's so much easier to beat yourself up. But imagine how nice it would be if when you made a mistake, you were the person that gave yourself some support. It's awesome. I got to tell you, it's worth learning to do. So that's going to be the end of this part, and then we'll move on from here.